Hello and welcome to Sounds Heal Podcast. I am your host, Natalie Brown, and thank you so much for joining me as we continue to explore the fields of sound therapy, sound healing, and generally the use of sound for health and wellness. Today, our guest is Paul Cardall, who is a man that was born with half a heart and really not given much time to live. It was thought that he wouldn't have much of a life. But through surgeries, through many challenges and determination, he did eventually, as an adult, have a heart transplant. And music really illuminated the way through these health challenges, these struggles, even despair over losing a friend in an accident when he was young. The piano itself transformed his life, and now through his own compositions, records, he's topped the Billboard charts multiple times and he's listened to all across the world. He brings this joy, this light um, for people in a transformative way all over the world through his piano compositions. And so wonderful to talk with Paul about his own health journey, his musical journey, and where he is now in life, and how music was really therapeutic for him, and now how it is for his audience as well. Just a beautiful conversation with Paul. This podcast is sponsored by the Om Shop and Spa. The Om Shop is located in Sarasota, Florida. You can also find them on the web at theomshop.com. And they have the United States' largest showroom of crystal bowls, vibrational tools, sound healing instruments, and they really are such a help if you really want to step up your level with new instruments, unique instruments, or you're just really trying to find something specific. They are so helpful. So check out their learning center as well, their blog, and all they have to offer, including trainings that I teach there in Florida, sound healing trainings. So thank you so much to the Om Shop for their sponsorship and support of this podcast. Please enjoy this episode with Paul Cardall. All right. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for joining here on the podcast. It's so great to have you, and really looking forward to introducing you to the podcast audience. Let's start with your journey, your health journey first, really your childhood and young adulthood, and your miracle story that, you were born with a condition. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Sure. We all have experiences that lead us to discover a purpose in life. And for me, I came into this world with only half a heart. And obviously, I don't remember the story, but my parents raised me with the idea that I wouldn't live very long. It's a miracle that I'm actually still alive, because day one, I was only 22 hours when they cut into me and operated on a heart that they said was only half there. So it was a single functioning ventricle. Congenital heart disease is the number one cause of infant-related deaths. And my mother, when she was 6 years old, her mom had given birth to a child that had passed away 2 days after. And so when I was born, obviously my mother was very worried. And in those days, in the 70s, you wouldn't have the child stay in the room with you. It just was like not tradition. So you would put the child in the crib and you would just hope to God that nothing happens. And so this was the notion, but I kept living, and I would go to the doctor, every 3 to 6 months as a child. And they always said, it was inevitable I'd need another procedure. There was no way a human heart in an infant could grow and survive. So, but I kept living. At age 13, I had endocarditis, which is a major staph infection, and it's in the bloodstream, and they couldn't figure out why antibiotics wasn't killing it. And it was basically killing me. But fortunately, because of technology, there was a brand new machine called the MRI. We kind of laugh about that now because they're everywhere, but It was in a warehouse by a hospital, and I had to get an ambulance, go like a block from the children's hospital to this adult hospital, got inside of it. And if you've ever been in a tube like the MRI, it's very claustrophobic. So I was completely restless. And they actually put on some music to help calm me down. And it helped, and then some sedatives. And they found I had a walnut sized blister on the section that the surgeons had repaired when I was an infant. So they had to go in. And again, they told my parents, and I hear all this, this surgery is practically impossible, but we're going to do our best. So that's, um, they were successful. They were successful. The technology was there to save me. I had to come back a year later for major reconstructive surgery. So that was the mentality of my childhood was, okay, I don't know if I'm going to be around because science is saying no. My parents were optimistic. My mother was, a believer in a higher power, and her Christian faith was very important and played a role in it all. And I relied on that for hope, and it helped me. And I went back for that surgery, and it was just miserable. They had to go in one or two, and then a third time because they had to then put it in a pacemaker because the surgeon had made some mistakes. And of course, my kids, my friends my friends over at the junior high were like, "Hey, man, don't worry about it. My grandpa's got a pacemaker, and he fought in World War II." So, so I was like, "Okay, cool, cool." So you try to look for the best of it all, but then ultimately, 22 years later, I went into heart failure and was listed for a heart transplant. The surgeon at the time said, look, you have O positive blood. So everyone has pretty much O positive blood. It's very difficult to get a heart. And I said, well, how long do I have? Again, he says, well, you got maybe a year. By then I, married and have a child, and gosh. And then I said, well, how long does it take to get a heart? And he's like, about a year. Like, oh my goodness. Well, can somebody give me some good news? I was put on the transplant waiting list for 385 days. I was wearing oxygen all the time because it was a congenital defect. They put me in the children's hospital where I lived as an adult, which was a unique, beautifully ironic experience because it led me to be less concerned about myself and more concerned about, because I'm a dad, all these kids that were in the hospital. And after 385 days, they came in and said they had a perfect match. And I had to prep for surgery. And, what do you say to your family? This is a life or death surgery. They take your heart out. And then doctors have come up with the way to remove your heart. So clinically, you're dead. And then they take the heart of another person and they raise you from the dead temporarily. So, I mean, it's like, how in the world do you deal with the fact that you're taking the heart of somebody who is loved? What do you say to your family as you go off into a surgery? I always ask people, if you had a birth certificate and I'd put it in an envelope and told you, hey, I've got the expiration date on the back of it, would you like to know? Most people like, no, 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 no. So that was kind of my life. And but all of these experiences, the miracle I think of it all, because each one is a miracle, is that along the journey of my life, and I think so many people's lives, people come into our lives who are there to buoy us up, to help us. And then we discover gifts that we have. And for me, after my third surgery, where I was just exhausted and tired of being ill, um, I discovered music. And I sat at the piano after I had lost a friend who was perfectly healthy, really angry. Why is he gone? Why am I fighting for my life? He gets hit by a car. My parents are paying a fortune to keep me alive. What is going on? What is this life all about? And I just hit like a note on the piano. And that note was a tone that just resonated with me because I'd been in the hospitals hearing all these beep, 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 beeps, just the emergency sounds. And I'd always be in emergency mode. So when I hit that note, boom, and then a second one and the third one, it started to help my brain process the trauma. And I began to understand through music, not through words or language, but through the universal feeling that music creates. That's somehow through it all, you hear something divine, something outside of ourselves say everything's going to be okay. So I began the habit of creating, and the rest is pretty much history, composing and sharing music.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Beautiful. Couple questions on that, specifically from the health side. What perspective on life do you think these challenges presented you? And being a transplant recipient, what kind of understanding says that has that brought you, looking back on it now?
Well, I think everybody is different because of the circumstances you're born into. I was born into a deeply religious Mormon home. And so there was this idea that we lived before we were born. We're here to get a body and learn to control it. And I was given kind of a crappy body. And then the idea then was to, be a very good person, and then you get to go on and get all these rewards in the afterlife and excel, become like God. So that was like my mindset, and that's all I ever knew. That was all I knew. But then obviously with the music and beginning to travel and get outside of that culture, I began to see that everybody is going through the same scenarios, that I'm not the only person with a heart problem. I'm not the only person who has to go to the hospital and face death. I'm not the only person whose mother worries constantly, because I had felt like, I don't know, I don't know why it was, but like you kind of feel like the boy in the bubble where everyone is around you. And then once you have that miracle, it's kind of like everybody kind of just goes away. It's like they say, okay, well, somebody's passed away, so pray for that family. Well, the minute the funeral's over, everyone stops praying. So you feel this energy go. But for me, and this is kind of a long answer to a short question, is I think life is pretty amazing. It's quite an adventure. It's extremely ironic. We go through the worst scenarios to experience the biggest highs in life. And it's, my daughter was saying to me, gosh, I just wish you and mom were still together, because after the transplant, we ended up getting a divorce because I sunk into this crazy, funky depression and just was not myself. And we're very good friends today, but she's like, I really wish that, but then she wouldn't have, the brothers she has now, and the other sister she has now, and the other dad that she has now, and all the friends she has now. So these are the crazy ironies in life. And we have to kind of learn to just accept crap happens. But as a result, you can turn that into something beautiful. And that, yeah, I fought every day to live. I've fought my whole life to live. And the older I get, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm still here. And I don't want it to ever end. It's worth going through that stuff, ironically, but I don't wish it on anybody.
Right. But to trust the challenges. Yeah, trust the challenges. Now, you had just said that after the transplant, you sunk into a depression. I was curious, all of a sudden having a full healthy heart. What did that do to you physically, emotionally, and mentally, spiritually? I mean, did you feel like a different person? What was that experience like?
It's such a good question. Well, I didn't, I had felt like my entire life, you survive and you adapt. And so all I ever knew was half a heart. So when you get a brand new heart, this was 4 chambers, this was normal anatomy. So The only thing I could compare it to is it was like I was driving around this beat up old truck, grandpa's truck that everybody takes camping, fishing, and moving and all that stuff, but it breaks down all the time. And then all of a sudden they hand me the keys to a Porsche. And I've never driven a fast car. And I don't know the rules. But I've talked to a neurologist, transplant people, psychiatrists. They basically say that the human heart is really yet to fully be discovered because we do have memory DNA embedded into us. And so, you learn to ride a bicycle and you'll always know how to ride a bicycle, even if you don't do it for 20 years. So whatever my donor experienced, and he did take his life and was depressed. I was never a depressed person, but now all of a sudden I have his DNA inside of me integrated into my own. And there's no nerve from the brain telling my heart what to do because everything is disconnected and the heart runs independent of the brain. So the heart, they're starting to believe, and I don't remember the scientist, or there's two or three that are saying that the heart is actually the master of the body and not the brain. And that's completely new philosophy and science. So yeah, it's what you do, you get survivor's guilt because you fully invest in other lives of people who are waiting for transplants, who need insurance, who aren't getting insurance, who aren't allowed in children's hospitals because they're adults, there's not enough experts. So you go into survivor's guilt of why am I here, what's going on, and you start to drown in death. And I'd been told that I had more PTSD than several soldiers that had come back from the first Gulf War. And I don't think you should compare, but that's what they were telling me based on the trauma that I had experienced from day one, them cutting into me and taking me away from my mother.
And so it sounds like that a big coping mechanism was music. So you started piano early on, but just briefly, is that right? You had a little training when you were a child and then
Yeah,
left it for a while?
my
Yeah.
mother had 8 kids. So when you put the kids in piano lessons, you hope they stick with it so you can get them out of your hair to read your book or watch General Hospital. So, but I didn't last. I hated it. I hated being told what to do, and I wanted to be outside, and I didn't stick with it. And I don't know if I should. I don't know if that would have changed the music. I think it would have, but it wasn't until I was 15, 16 that I began to be really interested in piano music because it was the 80s. George Winston was popular. Yanni had that big, long, flowing hair. And the movie Amadeus came out about Mozart. And there was actually a music video of one of Mozart's songs on MTV. So, like, classical piano was cool. And I noticed how people would gather around a piano and everyone was playing Heart and Soul or, Root Beer Rag from Billy Joel or some of these other songs. And I wanted to be able to do that, but I couldn't. But then a friend of mine who could do all that passed. And I was just trying to figure out, like, what is going on? What, like I had mentioned. And that's when I hit those notes and I would just sit and play and it would process. It would help me process.
So it was really intuitive. It was as a way to express these emotions that you didn't really know how to perhaps express through, maybe it was crying or whatever it was. It was the notes on the piano were just expressing what you needed to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think all art is somewhat biographical, even though authors won't admit that characters are really about themselves. Um, but so every one of the albums I've done ever since, my first one, it's all things I've been processing and feeling. And so when you go through and you're like, well, hold on, this is more orchestra, and then here's some lyrics, and here's this and this, you can kind of go back. I can go back and go, oh, okay, I know what was going on.
Right. Yeah, well, as a violinist myself, I'm a player. I love the strings that you have in your music, and of course, some of your music can be very orchestral, and you have vocalists. So, just explain how it started from that one note that really shifted how you felt to how that kind of built over the years into your career.
Well, I think we're ever evolving. And as seen in my music, I start with just a piano, just solo piano. But then I started to learn more about music. And I was thinking, oh, I need to add a cello. And so I added a cello on the next record. And then the next record was a quartet. And then the next record had a whole orchestra. And it's very expensive to do that. And so when you're an independent artist like me, and though I had signed with Virgin Records and done 2 albums for them, I had discovered that I could do the marketing better because I was more passionate and understood it from college. Um, and you're always going to get further when you handle the things that you're most passionate about than delegating them off to people who don't really want to be at work. So I really focused on explaining to people, what the music was. And it was very specific. It's a resource to help you access spiritual feelings, emotional, mental healing. And so each album continued to progress and grow to where I think by the time I did my eighth record, New Life, which I wrote after the transplant, I finally knew my voice in terms of, okay, this only requires this, and this only requires that. This needs this. Whereas before I was kind of just experimenting and trying to develop. So I would say the first half of my records are all me kind of at college, and like this brand new album I just did, that's me finally realizing, what, I don't need to go and sit for hours and try to learn or create this song. I need to just go in and kind of be a medium, like just play what I feel. So I went into the studio and I took this piano that is slightly out of tune and upright and broken. And I'm a Steinway artist. I'm supposed to play like the very best $250,000 pianos. I think it was like a $30,000 upright piano. And I thought, this is so human because it's flawed. But my job is to try to create something beautiful out of something that is broken. And so I sat and I played for 3 days. We recorded 4 hours every night. And from that, I took the best 14 songs. And then when we add the strings, I was like, this is going to be horrible. This is not going to go over with my audience at all. But the feedback we're getting as we've started to release songs like September Winds and Thanksgiving, like I'm blown away because it was very vulnerable to release it, but I'm blown away by people are like, oh, finally, we're back to the New Life record. We're back to this album. Um, and I actually enjoy listening to it now. I usually don't listen to my records.
Yeah, I mean, I guess some people describe the style as classical or like pop, new age, minimalist, but I think maybe the best way to understand the style is perhaps some of the things your audience has expressed to you. Are there any stories that really pop into your mind that people have reached out to you and said your music has influenced this or helped them through something? Um,
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I just posted this new video last night, Advent prayer, and this woman right here, Makala, you're the only reason I can sleep peaceful at night. Your music is the only thing that can calm me down when I'm stressed. Your music has gotten me through the hardest trials, including severe depression and suicidal thoughts in high school. Like, who leaves comments like that? I mean, that's so vulnerable. You go down and it brings me peace. And look, I get it. I've been on the deathbed my entire life. I've had friends who have taken their life, who raised money to keep me alive. So it's like I'm trying to make music that helps people know their value, how important they are, and that this life is worth living. We seem to be under this umbrella right now that um, it's just not a good world. But I think we're going through growing pains because cultures that are diverse are to we're starting to get to know each other through this internet and communication. We're starting to become a family finally on this planet. And we're going through growing pains. And the great thing is we're not doing it with weapons. We're doing it with communication. There's always going to be division, but people get so stressed out, and I get it. But sometimes we just have to step away and go hit a note on the piano and try to start processing how amazing and how valuable we are, you know.
Yeah, music has a beautiful way of bringing people together or shifting how they feel without somebody having to say anything at all, right? And I think you're so right that we are in this time of anxiety and fear. Um, but growing pains is a good way to express that because people are trying to find different ways to communicate, and here we are on Zoom, able to connect in this way, and it's really a beautiful learning experience for us all. Why do you think music is a way in to shift our stress, to shift our emotion? I know for you, initially, your music was quite personal. It was for you. And
Yeah.
now I'm sure what you're offering is a service to others. So how do you find music to be so therapeutic?
Well, Harvard has actually done a lot of studies on this, Harvard Health, and they have put people in MRIs and put things on them and taken surveys and discovered that when you listen to certain types of music, particularly the type that I'm creating, classical or anything like that, your body is releasing dopamine. And most people will go when you have pain, you try to soothe yourself in some way. When you're a baby, you suck your thumb. You know, when you get into your adolescence, you deal with your sexuality and you try to soothe yourself through self pleasure, or you get into drugs or alcohol, or there's all these things to soothe us. So what are the positive things that can help soothe us? Reading a book, going on a walk, doing art, writing a poem. But listening to music releases that dopamine that gives us pleasure. And if you play an instrument, they said through the studies that you are more likely to not get Alzheimer's because you've learned to these brain exercises, focus. And so when parents are giving their kids piano lessons, you're not giving them piano lessons so they can play an instrument. You're giving them piano lessons so their brain can develop better. The child's brains don't develop till they're age 25, and yet they're doing things to themselves that slow that process. So by the time they're 40, they're still thinking like a 13-year-old, which is why we have so many problems. I was that same person, living a 13-year-old boy's mind, going through my first divorce. It's well, my one only. and so it was like I needed to figure out how to grow up, and I hadn't grown up because I'd still been living my mentally in a hospital. And so with music, I was able to start to process being a man, what that means for me, um, and how that defines me. And so there are so many scientific benefits, and I actually listed on my website um, all the benefits, the music therapy, some of these studies from Harvard, from McGill University, clinical facts.
Yeah, and it is so relevant and also individual. I think everybody has a different type of music that they might use for motivation versus calming. Um, would you say overall most of yours are fairly calming, like more for relaxation, uplifting uh, type
That
music? But yeah,
yeah, that's the goal. That's the
yeah,
goal. But an artist is always unsettled. So this, a couple of years ago, I did like I was into Christian worship music. I was not in that world. I was, Mormon at the time, but I really liked it. And so I was experimenting with another uh, Christian in Utah, and it was like two different worlds. And I was just trying to bridge relationships with people. And it was really fun. But my audience, who was used to piano music, was like, what is all this rock and roll? And I'm all, I got to breathe sometimes. And so and then I went back to it and, had my first number one Billboard record. And then I wanted to this record label was like, well, I want you to do that again. And I was like, well, actually, I want to do this. So I collaborated I wanted to have a country music video, which you do not have a country music video if you're doing piano music. And my record label was like, no, you can't get on CMT. I'm all, oh yeah. So anyways, I got with this group, Thompson Square. They wrote, "Are you going to kiss me or not?" And we got together. I wanted to write this song that basically told my story, "The Man with Half a Heart." And then while we were writing that, we wrote this song called "All I See Is Snow," because sometimes during the holidays, we're like, man, I don't know if I can get this gift. I got to buy for the kids. I can't afford. They want this. I can't afford that. What am I going to do? And you got to take care of this and this, and it can be a very stressful time. So sometimes all I see is snow. And I don't know if it goes for the people in Florida, but it's the same concept or idea. And so we made this video, and it actually ended up on CMT. And of course, you know, it's it's one of the most critically acclaimed albums, but it's because my audience is so used to piano music, it's my least selling, but I think it's one of my best. Um, and you have to do that. You have to step out of your comfort zone and try things. And that was one of those things that I tried. And, David Archuleta's on it, Tyler Glenn from Neon Trees, Ty Herndon, just all these amazing artists that I love. And the point of it was I was getting tired of people dividing people. Institutions tend to draw lines in the sand of who you can have relationships with, who are good, who are not. So I had this idea of creating the broken miracle, which is this concept of we're all beautifully broken miracles, and everyone is welcome to the table. And if you go to this table and to have this party, you're going to recognize that some people are not there, and you're going to look at the host, and the host is going to say, "Yeah, let's go get them." So that was the idea of bringing. I've got a Christian pastor on the record. I have a very openly gay liberal on the record. I have, a conservative Mormon kid. I've got this country band, but it all flows together because I wanted everyone to be united. So
right.
some people don't
Right.
like.
And I think both in musical style, it's amazing to branch off and just challenge yourself and be inspired by different things. But same thing from perspective and politics and religion, and just realize that all can be accepted and all can be united. Yeah, that's beautiful. So how has the past, year and a half, 2 years been for you? Has it this time allowed you more composition rather than perhaps touring, or what have things been like for you since the pandemic?
Pandemic has been interesting because it's been extremely challenging for so many people, and my parents have lost friends as a result of it. My grandma passed away, not from COVID, but shortly before it. We lost my wife's father right before it happened. Um, but during it, I was able to create the Broken Miracle, and then I was able to create this this new album, December. And I think the thing that I observed most is the miracle of communication. the way that these Zoom podcast or other mediums started to really propel communication and dialogue. And I really think what historically we'll look back and go, oh my gosh, what a significant time where the world shrank in terms of recognizing our value. And obviously, the media has to focus on the bizarre. So you see these stories that are just horrible and bad things happen. But when you're driving on the freeway, you're always wondering, why is there traffic and why is it everybody slowing down? When I get past that accident, I'm not going to slow down. I'm going to keep going. But you slow down. So the media has to create these accidents on the side of the road, and then propel it. And so then everybody's obsessed with it. Everybody's, has an opinion about it. And then the politics. And I mean, bottom line, we are progressing as a species and we are preserving life by having children. I'm a big proponent. We need to have more children. Um, and Yeah, I think we're learning to get along in the sand pile, you know, and we've got some ways to go, but we're communicating with each other and learning about other cultures and race and religions, and a lot of institutions are falling apart because people are seeing through the bullcrap, but we're becoming more united, I think.
Yeah, it's been a very revealing time, and that's a great way to look at the blessings, the blessings of it, and how it has brought us together, and so many offerings. You see people, whether it's Facebook or through Zoom, offering all these things that maybe you wouldn't have had a chance or opportunity to connect with or learn about, um, until we were presented with these challenges. Yeah, yeah. So talk about your new album, and of course any other new exciting projects you have going on or coming up.
Well, thank you. Yeah, December is the new album, and it's something you can listen to year round. I created it as a very specific resource to help you process feelings and emotions. And it's something that you can be present with or have in the background. And a lot of times I say, honestly, if you can't fall asleep by the fifth song, I failed you, because it is an antidote to a narcotic or to alcohol. You can listen to the music and it will calm you and soothe you. And I've had so many parents go, gosh, the minute I put the music on, the kids calm down. Like you can't give them Benadryl. So, try music. And so, yeah, that's pretty much what's been happening, is the focus of making this album. And then I have music videos that are going to be coming out that are very emotionally stimulating, with nature, elements of nature, something you can put on the screen. And again, it's visual. The kids will be mesmerized by what it is. And then, yeah, sheet music is out. And just, I just keep writing, creating. And yeah.
That's fantastic. Wonderful. Well, I'll be sure to link your website. And of course, people can find you on all the various platforms and have a listen. Um, so thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
your story, sharing your light, and your music, and being a service to so many people through your gifts and your connection
Thank you,
through
Natalie.
music. So yeah, any last things you want to leave us with? Any last thoughts?
I just think anyone who is in a low place, um, don't quit. Honestly, don't quit. I'm a big believer in the afterlife, because I've faced death so many times. I don't know if my mind has forced me to believe that, but I've experienced some of it. And I'm telling you, this life is amazing. It really, really is. And my grandfather, who just, endured World War II, got injured, the life they provided for my family is mind blowing. And we can create, not music, but we can create experiences for other people around us who need us. And so when you're in a funk, you know you are loved, you are valued. Listen to some good music, go dance, put on some Prince or something. I don't know. So just enjoy the moments and remember those moments.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I appreciate you so much, and thank you for the joy and light that you offer through your own journey and through your music. Thank you so much, Paul.
Yeah, we'll see you later.
Okay, take care.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Sounds Heal Podcast, sponsored by the Om Shop and Spa. You can keep up to date with what's coming up next at soundshealstudio.com. Check things out on Facebook at Sounds Heal Studio, and you can listen to all previous podcasts as well as music meditations on the YouTube channel at Sounds Heal Studio. Be well and stay tuned.